Busy week in the fantasy football world this week, guys. We've got free agents flying around the place. Free agent running backs signing with new teams that honestly were much bigger contracts than I had initially made them out to be. So we've got to give some updated running back rankings for 2024 fantasy football right now. We're getting into the top 30 running back rankings for this upcoming season in fantasy football. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. Number 1 and number 2, and really the top 5, they're all the same. I did these rankings about a month ago, and they're going to continue to be the same. Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, they're in tier 1. Now, I actually made the change to put Bijan Robinson in tier 1, not because I don't think McCaffrey, if he hits the ceiling that he has, won't be in a tier of his own. Like, I could easily see by week 6 or 7 him being in his own tier, because he's been in his own tier for several years now in fantasy football. That's not the reason why. The reason why is because I do believe that Bijan Robinson does have a very high ceiling as well. Now they've got stabilization at quarterback with Kirk Cousins now on the roster in Atlanta. They've got Arthur Smith trying to use the 2 running back system out of the building. So Bijan Robinson looks to handle 300 opportunities plus this season. And obviously, if Christian McCaffrey stays at the level that he did last year, he's going to be elite again. Kiron Williams at 3 and Breece Hall at 4. So Kiron Williams is in the same spot he was, and it's for very good reason. Like, the Rams are making no moves at running back, at least that we know of. Maybe they draft a running back to be the backup, but I can't imagine that they're going to draft a running back to replace Kiron Williams. And if he gets the nod again, I mean, this guy's young. This guy is on a very innovative offense. Like, there's no reason for me to believe that Kiron Williams won't do it again in 2024. Maybe not at the level of 19.9 fantasy points per game, but 17, 16 points per game. That's absolutely what I'm expecting. And then Breece Hall at 4. Look, Breece Hall, regardless of what you thought about his season and how he accrued his fantasy points, the numbers don't lie. 15 fantasy points per game, basically in a half PPR, amounted to that kind of finish for Breece Hall. He was excellent in fantasy football, and a lot of that did have to do with almost 6 targets per game. Will he get that again with Rodgers this time? I honestly don't think it's that far off to believe that he could get that number, or maybe like 1 less target per game. So Breece Hall, the way I look at it is either his targets go down and his efficiency rises with Aaron Rodgers, or his targets stay basically the same and his efficiency rises. Either way, I think it's a win-win for him. Jahmyr Gibbs at 5 and Jonathan Taylor at 6. Again, this is exactly where we stopped with all these guys being at the same exact place that they were about a month ago. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to continue to share the backfield with Dave Montgomery. This is me at number 5 capping Jahmyr Gibbs' ceiling, because I don't think that Dave Montgomery, it's going to be like last year. They're not just going to stick Dave Montgomery on the bench. They have this guy for 2 more years under contract, and they gave him more than half of his total value of the contract. It's guaranteed. So Dave Montgomery is not going to just ride the pine all of a sudden in 2024. This is going to be a shared backfield again, but the beauty is it's so efficient. Jahmyr Gibbs, 5.2 yards per carry in 2023, 11 total touchdowns, and 4.7 targets per game. Very similar season I'm expecting, except I'm expecting him to do it basically throughout the season. So maybe he averages 15 to 16 fantasy points per game. And then Jonathan Taylor, I think this is a bounce back year. Listen, Jonathan Taylor is still not 26 years old yet, and he's coming into the season now, hopefully going to be fully healthy with a good offensive line, with a good offensive coach, with a running quarterback that will ensure that he is a more efficient runner. Everything lines up. All he needs to do is stay healthy. And I'm banking on the big return season from Jonathan Taylor. Because look at what he did when he played. Almost 15 fantasy points per game. He had very good moments in 2023. It just wasn't as often as we wanted because he was injured some of that time. Devon, Etienne, and Raheem Mostert at 7 and 8. This is where their first changes have happened. So both of these guys rose up my rankings here. And the reason is actually pretty simple. Like, the reason that they both rose is because I just believe that, look, Miami is a firepower offense. They can't compete against the best consistently, but you put them up against relatively middle of the road opponents, they're going to put fireworks on you. I mean, that's what they're going to do. And a lot of it is based on their run game. And again, the thing about Etienne is he actually moved up 5 spots. He was initially lower than Mostert. And when I looked at his attempts and his opportunities per game, that was the reason why he was lower. But even if he stays relatively around that time, like, I think that they're going to give him more opportunities this year with an aging Raheem Mostert. But even if it's like 2 more carries per game and like 1 more target per game, that's going to warrant him being above Raheem Mostert, I think, because he's just so efficiently used. It's not that he's going to continue to average 8 yards per carry, but this guy is so efficiently used in this offense, and he's such a big play threat that I just believe in him. And Raheem Mostert, it's hard to see him matching that season again in 2023, but I do think that Raheem Mostert in the same offensive system with Devon Etienne as a sidekick, he's going to continue to be relatively efficient in this offense. Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley at 9 and 10 are free agent signings this offseason that were the biggest deals so far. We're filming this on Monday night, so by the time you're watching this, more moves have happened for sure. But Josh Jacobs to Green Bay and Saquon Barkley to Philly, honestly, 2 of the best case scenarios that could have happened. Green Bay for Josh Jacobs, I think, is fantastic. So obviously that means Aaron Jones is gone. Aaron Jones is out of the building, and A.J. Dillon's not coming back either. This is Josh Jacobs' backfield in 2024 for the very least. 2024 fantasy football, I think, will be very kind to Josh Jacobs. This is a much better offensive line than it was in Las Vegas. This is a much better, more explosive offense run by a better quarterback and a better offensive coach than it was in Las Vegas. I think Josh Jacobs easily has top 10 potential, and we could, honestly, if he stays healthy for a full season, I don't doubt the fact that we could see Josh Jacobs have another top 5 season. He is a very high upside guy, and I can imagine myself drafting a lot of him. And if you want to get in some early drafts through Underdog, get in some of these best ball leagues with the high upside to get some major wins, join Underdog today by using code FFN at your deposit to get that deposit matched up to 100%, up to $100 on that first deposit. And then Saquon Barkley to Philadelphia. If you want to draft him too, I'm big on that as well. Listen, Saquon Barkley, going to a better offensive line. Going to a better offense, period, end of story. Better quarterback, better weapons, better offensive line to help him take the pressure off of what? 3.9 yards per carry in 2023. Why is that? Because he was the only freaking piece that actually worked in the New York offense. I'm so big on both of these running back signings. They were both not this high last time I ranked them. Saquon was actually around this area because I initially thought he was going to the Chargers. Listen, Chargers would have been good. Philadelphia is a very good option as well. James Cook at 11 and Isaiah Pacheco at 12. So obviously they don't have the hype around them right now because they didn't get signed this week. But they're just 2 steady guys. And really, I think that James Cook, what we're going to see with him, and the reason I like him at 11 here is because not only did he finish at the running back 11 in 2023, but he's also in a situation where he's coming into the season with Joe Brady as the coordinator. Joe Brady, who took over for Ken Dorsey mid-season last year, is the one who was responsible for giving James Cook about 20 touches per game towards that end of the season. And that was what helped him deliver some major games during the playoffs. If you give him a full season of that, I think James Cook is a very good fantasy football running back this year. And Pacheco at 12 is just another key cog in that offense. I mean, you've got Mahomes, you've got Rashad Rice, you've got Kelsey still. Who knows how much longer Kelsey's going to be Kelsey, but Isaiah Pacheco is your guy at the running back position. Now, he's not averaging, 16, 17, 20 yards per carry or 20 attempts per game, but Pacheco is efficient because he continues to play in an offense that is pass first. He does see targets out of the backfield, and he gets it in the end zone at the goal line. So Pacheco is not really exciting necessarily because he's not a huge big play guy necessarily, but efficiency, gets in the end zone, and he's a very steady player at 13.7 fantasy points per game. Travis Etienne drops to 13, and David Montgomery drops to 14. Listen, I've been sniffing Travis Etienne out for about a month now. So heading into 2023, I love Travis Etienne. I was big on him. He was my pick for the Josh Jacobs of the year. The guy who was going to win best ball leagues and win fantasy leagues. And really for the first half of the season, he lived up to it. That second half of the season, it was not good. That was what helped him to get 3.8 yards per carry. That's not a very good number. Listen, he was handling about 20 opportunities per game between attempts and targets. And I think we just saw the true colors of Travis Etienne, which is a very good running back, but best served if he's got a guy who could be a relief back. And that's proven by the coach's words, Doug Peterson, who said just about a week ago, I want to limit his touches in 2024. I want to kind of get some more guys to help alleviate some touches. I think that's because he knows he's more efficient and he's a better player if he has some help. So that will ultimately lower his ceiling just from a volume perspective. And then Montgomery, again, very similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs is better. But not only did both of these guys finish as top 15 running backs in 2023 fantasy football, heading into 2024 fantasy football, same great offensive line, same great offensive coordinator, all the weapons, Jared Goff, it's exactly the same. And their roles are going to be very similar. Monty's going to handle the majority of the carries. He'll handle more, but he's not going to be the receiving back. And that's going to lead him to having 10 touchdown seasons again in 2024. Alvin Kamara at 15 and Kenneth Walker at 16. Alvin Kamara, it's kind of just a little difficult right now for me to rank him because I don't know what's going to happen with him. I would think that he'll stay in New Orleans. I haven't heard otherwise at this point. And, you know, he was so good last year. Like, why would you want to get rid of him? I understand, like, if he's older, so it's like if you're trying to move off of this guy, I could get it, but they don't have anyone to move off him with. So Kendre Miller's not stepping in and providing Kamara-like production. So Kamara, I think he stays, and it's kind of fluid right now. Just want to see what happens, but Kamara last year was just still really dominant in fantasy. Again, because he's just such a lethal receiving back in fantasy football. And Kenneth Walker at 16, I've shared my issues with this one. Like, it doesn't change. Nothing has changed throughout the offseason on this. I just wish they didn't draft Zach Charbonnet. It totally muddies this backfield. That's the reality here. High upside guy, pretty efficient, capable of big plays, but gonna be capped because he's had his share of injuries, and Zach Charbonnet, I'm sure, will be more involved this year. Rashad White at 17 and Derrick Henry at 18. Rashad White is going to hang back here for the time being, although I'm really kind of like adjusting my opinions on the fly right now. Because earlier in the offseason, I was kind of convinced that this guy was just a David Montgomery type of big season for 1 year, and he's going to go back to like top 15, top 20 production. I'm not really sure that's the case. He had a lot of opportunities per game, 20 opportunities per game, and not very efficient doing it. So that was like when David Canales, the offensive coordinator, left, I was like, is he going to put that level of production up again? I have doubts, but Tampa really likes him. Everything I'm hearing about this guy is we like him. He's really close to being an elite running back. And they're not making moves this offseason. They just signed Chase Edmonds again. What kind of competition is that? Rashad White is going to be the guy again, it looks like. So stay tuned where exactly I'm going to rank him because he's fluid right now. And Derrick Henry is very fluid. Again, I'm filming this on Monday night. He has not signed with the team yet. I have to film this ahead of time because I've got prior obligations to attend to this weekend. So I'm getting this video done on Monday night. He may very well have signed with the Ravens by now. He may have signed with the Cowboys. He may have signed with the Vikings. There's a couple places that haven't gotten their guy yet, and all three of those teams, I guarantee, are looking at him. Derrick Henry, just based on numbers, 4.2 yards per carry, still a workhorse back at over 16 carries per game, and 12 rushing touchdowns. This guy can still carry the load. Even if he's not a 250 carry guy, 225 carries, that's easy money for Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry's going to have another good fantasy season. Just need to see who it's going to be with. James Conner at 19 and TaiJ Spears at 20. James Conner, again, it's similar to the Kamara situation where it's like, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in Arizona. Do they draft help? This guy's, approaching 30. So he's getting towards the end of his career, but he wasn't inefficient last year. 5 yards per carry. This dude is very efficient. Again, he's got the help of the rushing quarterback, so that's why I always think that James Conner, as long as he's the guy, is going to be good in fantasy. But I'm confused on what they're going to do with him. He's getting to the end of his contract. So do they commit to him again by not drafting a running back, or do they draft a running back in the second round? We'll see what happens. I've got him here at 19 right now. And then TaiJ Spears, on a per game basis, you can't glean much off of this other than the fact that he's efficient and he was a very good third down converter last year. So TaiJ Spears, obviously now with Tony Pollard signing with the Tennessee Titans, is clearly not going to be a workhorse guy. And I never really thought he would. He's just not, he doesn't have the size for it. Honestly, I think him and Pollard have a good chance of being a really good duo. I really, really do. So stay tuned, because I think that TaiJ Spears and Tony Pollard, one of them, I believe one of them in particular, could be a top 15 to 10 fantasy running back. I just don't know how they're going to divide up carries yet. It's unspoken. TaiJ's a third-round pick, while Pollard just got signed for $8 million a year. So I'm leaning towards TaiJ just because he's younger and he's a little more explosive at this point of his career. But we're going to have to see where exactly these touches are leading to. And then Ramondre at 21 and Tony Pollard at 22. Ramondre Stevenson, New England signed Antonio Gibson to be probably a backup, I'm assuming. I mean, they signed him 3 years, $11 million. That's not much. Ramondre Stevenson, I've heard all offseason that he's been pining to be their guy. Featured back. That's what I've been reading about it. So hopefully they grant his wish, because I do believe he has that potential to be very good as a featured back. And I do think that, how can their offense get worse? That's the real question, is how can their offense get any worse? They got rid of Mac Jones. Belichick is out of the building, so they're now looking to develop some more offense. They're probably going to draft Drake May to New England. That is if Washington doesn't get him first. So we'll see. I think Ramondre has upside, but I'm keeping him here at 21. And then Pollard again. Tennessee, $8 million a year. Didn't capitalize in a 3-down back position last year. So he's best served as a, 215 opportunity, 215, total carries / targets per year guy. He's better in that role. So I think that with TaiJ Spears, they're both kind of similar running backs. It's going to be interesting to see how Tennessee plays these two, because I do think if used correctly, both of these guys could be very efficient running backs and very good running backs in fantasy football. 23 and 24. I've got Trey Benson and Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So who is Trey Benson? Trey Benson is a rookie running back out of the University of Florida State. Now, Trey Benson highlights, in my opinion, a very weak running back class in this year's class. Trey Benson separated himself at the NFL Combine for me. This guy he has the premier size. You can see it on the screen at over 215 pounds at 6 feet tall. This guy also ran a sub 4.4 40 time. And let me tell you, the 40 time is not as important with wide receivers. It is very important for an NFL running back. And in fantasy football, it very much translates to fantasy success. From a size perspective, this guy looks a lot like Breece Hall. Do I think he's the prospect that Breece Hall is? No, I don't. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But I do believe that Trey Benson probably is going to go day 2, probably in the mid to early second round at this point. So if a team gets a hold of him that has a good offensive line, a good offensive culture, I see Trey Benson being the shock, because we always have a shock. Kiron Williams last year, for years and years we have shocks, right? I think Trey Benson out of this running back class is going to be the one who shocks us. And then Najee Harris, another day, another dollar. I mean, there's no excitement around Najee. He's Iron Man. He doesn't get injured. He doesn't miss games. And he's largely inefficient. I think it's actually, if anything, going to get better with Arthur Smith, though. Guy likes the 2 running back system. Gets a quarterback upgrade with Russell Wilson. So it takes some pressure off that run game. And that offensive line, it is improving. Broderick Jones, they made the right selection last year at tackle. they're improving on that offensive line. So I think that the possibility that Najee could be a top 20 guy is there, but I'm going to keep him here at 24 right now just because I don't fully believe in Russ. And Najee Harris is already not an old running back, but he's getting older. And Jaylen Warren obviously has more juice. Javante Williams at 25 and DeAndre Swift at 26. Javante is one of the lone guys left in Denver from before the Sean Payton era, and that should tell you that he likes him. Like, that's a good thing because he is a physical running back. But, I mean, just look at the numbers. Like, I was so unimpressed with him. It's so hard for me to rank him much higher. Yes, I like the fact that he's Sean Payton's guy. I do like the fact that he's still there and he hasn't been traded. And I do like the fact that Denver is purging their team to make it better. It's so hard for me to rank him much higher, though. He's just underwhelming in every sense of the word last year. I want to see how the offseason goes. If he comes out in camp and he's getting rave reports about his explosion again, then we'll be talking about moving up to top 20 range. And then Swift signs with the Chicago Bears. Another kind of went under the radar on Monday as far as good fantasy signings go. But, with Chicago, it's like they haven't had a good running back in fantasy football for, honestly, quite a while now. Really since Matt Forte. Do I think that DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy? Not necessarily based on his own play. While I do think he's efficient, I do think that he definitely needs to have a Deontay Foreman there to carry, 6 to 7 times a game. But Caleb Williams will change things. He will change things. And I think it probably is for the better. Makes it more efficient for the running backs. But yeah, I don't have much trust in this one right now. Austin Ekeler at 27 and Aaron Jones at 28. So as of right now, one of these guys is signed and one of them is not. So Austin Ekeler at 27 with the charge. He just recently signed with the Commanders on Monday. 2 years, like $9 million or something like that. So not much attached to him, and he's going to be 31 by the time his contract expires. So Austin Ekeler, obviously last year was last year, and I can't get it out of my mind. Dude was inefficient, and the touchdowns dropped, and we saw what he is. So with the Commanders, that bad of an organization again, a rookie quarterback, maybe find some solace in him, but I really don't think that he's going to be the lead carry guy over Brian Robinson. I think that he will get carries. I think he'll probably get around, 7 to 10 a game and probably around that number of targets still. But Austin Ekeler, the thrill is gone for me. And then Aaron Jones, I still have some thrill in him. He was good last year in spots. Now, obviously, with Josh Jacobs there, Aaron Jones is not coming back to Green Bay. And again, by the time you're watching this, he may very well be with somewhere else. I've read reports as of Monday night that the Vikings are interested in him. It would be good to see him in Minnesota because that offense is really good, but I really want to see him with a team where he doesn't have to be the lead guy. Because I still believe that he's efficient enough and explosive enough to, on a limited basis, get you some really good touches and some really good fantasy games if he's not the lead guy. Chase Brown and Jaylen Warren rounding it out at 29 and 30. Chase Brown of Cincinnati is the last man standing as of now. I guess aside from Zach Moss, who signed with the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday, but Joe Mixon's out. So what I predicted earlier the offseason came true. I said last time I did these rankings, I think that Joe Mixon is not going to be a Bengal, and he's not. So Chase Brown is the guy that is the longest tenured outside of Trayvon Williams, I guess, but he's irrelevant. Zach Moss is the guy that they signed. So let's see if they draft a guy. Let's see if they hang on. Because I think that based on play, I would prefer Chase Brown over Zach Moss, and maybe Cincinnati will as well. And then Jaylen Warren, again, I think that Pittsburgh will have 2 top 30 running backs in fantasy football. I think it's a very likely outcome because of how efficient both of these guys were last year. Najee's the ground and pound guy. Jaylen Warren is going to get you 5.3 yards per carry because he's explosive. Arthur Smith, I have trust in him using both of these guys correctly and being beneficial in fantasy football to a certain extent. As always, let me know what you think of these rankings in the comments below and what questions you want answered for 2024 fantasy football. And to get a look at the top 30 wide receivers in 2024 fantasy football, click on this video right now.